I can't leave media days behind without sharing the parts about our team that I'm really impressed with. And that would be head coach Kirby Smart. He strode into the Grand Hyatt last Tuesday in a way that you're happy to see if you're a Georgia fan, because Kirby did not look stressed. He did not look concerned. He looked very confident, and he looked like he knew he had a good team. The only question is, what is that team ultimately going to become? And so when he stepped to the microphone, both in the big hall as well as in front of the smaller assembled media, the last couple of years, Kirby has stepped right up there and delivered some bombs as far as the messaging for his team, like this one.
We will not be hunted at the University of Georgia. I can promise you that.
That one's fantastic, and I love it, and we play it all the time, and it was exactly what his team did in 2022. And in 2023, he had a different plan. There's a new message.
Better never rests. We believe that. Those are strong words now when you think about it. Think deep on it. Better never rests. Our kids understand it. Our kids have learned it. What drives us for this season is intrinsic motivation. We're not going to be controlled by outside narratives and what people say and who's going to be the quarterback. The intrinsic motivation comes from within and what we decide to do. This team, the 2023 team, is still defining itself. We don't know where that goes. That happens over the course of the rest of the summer and fall camp, but I like where it's at. I love the buy-in. I love the fact these guys love being around each other, and they love competing, and they love football.
Now, believe me when I tell you that when Kirby dropped that one on everybody, and beforehand he had explained where it came from, and the whole idea was about complacency and what Georgia's doing to get ready for the 2023 season. And everyone sort of knew Kirby came locked and loaded with some sort of new messaging. And that one is one that resonated with everyone in there. The minute he dropped it, you could sort of feel the buzz about that because it's short, it's quick, it's punchy, and it gets the point across, straight away. So he hit a home run with that messaging. And as we listen to the players talk, and when we listen to Kirby talk the rest of his time in Nashville, that was the point, that was the theme that came up again and again and again. And as I said, this whole conversation was sort of wrapped in the idea of, is Georgia going to be complacent going into 23, right? They're back-to-back. They're SEC champions last year. They're back-to-back national champions. So what are they going to be able to do to keep that edge? And Kirby, again, he just answered it head on.
I've never said that anybody thought our team was going to be 7-5. We expect to be good at University of Georgia. We want sustained success. So we have to do that by winning every day. And that's not going to change whether we win it or not this year. The threat for us is complacency. The first thing you have to do is acknowledge that it's a threat. When you see complacency take over, it's when a team's enthusiasm and ego start worrying about outcomes. That's not what we do at Georgia. That's not what we bring into our place. That's not what we bring into the culture we want to have. We want selfless people who love football, and that's what we build around. I don't care about the three-peat, the two-peat, or the one-peat. I care about complacency. And if the focus is on that and outcomes, I think the rest will take care of itself in terms of allowing our guys to focus on being the best they can be.
And the key takeaway there is that he's just trying to keep the main thing the main thing. What is important now? And he went on to say at one point in here, we're only focused on the next 24 hours. We're worried about being the best we can be right now. And that sort of focus is what allows them to maintain their edge inside the building. Now, if you're going to be at the University of Georgia and not be paid to be there, like a coach, it takes a special type of person to live up to that kind of standard. And so Kirby took a few minutes to explain the kind of players that they look for at the University of Georgia in their recruiting process.
You start by developing good people and bringing good people in. I just talked about it on the main floor, but we look for two characteristics: people that love football and people that embrace a selfless role. Once you do that, they don't have complacency because they have the right hardwiring. So, people that worry about outcomes like, oh gosh, my ego, why am I not getting the ball? Or like, oh man, we lost the game. Complacency sets in on those people because when they hit a milestone, they don't know how to respond to it. So we want people that are intrinsically motivated. I mean, they come from inside out and they want to be great regardless of that. Now, do we have all players like that? No. We're trying to move our needle to get the majority that way so that we can stomp out that complacency. And we just want to be as dominant and as good as we can be, and that starts with competing against each other.
Now, that bit there at the end I found to be especially poignant because in the days of NIL and transfer portal, there are a lot of people who have a lot to say about the reason players decide to transfer from one school to another, whether or not something may or may not be a good fit. And Kirby, again, he did not back away from any of these topics. He addressed them head on, and he said, listen, every person in our program is not that way right now, but we're working to move that way, which means that if, hopefully they can adjust someone's personality, they can adjust an attitude and outlook, show them the value in being at the University of Georgia. But if they can't, and the priorities are all messed up, then Kirby has zero issues telling someone that maybe you ought to find a new place to be. And there have been some players that have left, and you have to think that this message was made very clear to them as well. So I'm not casting aspersions on anyone in particular. I'm just saying that once you have a little perspective on what they're looking for inside the program, it helps you to understand more about, where the program is when they have people who decide to transfer out or transfer in, because it works both ways. Now, one of the other things that Kirby took a second to address, and I really sort of enjoyed this one because when you do stuff like this, when you're out here as a public face and you're talking about my university, I'm an alumnus of the university, a proud graduate. I've been a dog fan my whole life. And when you're a person like me and you're out here talking about these kind of things, there's always somebody that's going to have something to say to you about it. He didn't bring this up on his own. He was asked the question. But one of the things that someone like me hears a lot of is, built by Bama, or Nick is the reason Georgia is good, which is just ridiculous. I mean, it's just flat out ridiculous. And Kirby has said time and time again, he has tremendous respect for Nick Saban. He enjoyed his time at Alabama, but that has nothing to do with what he's doing in Athens right now. So he had the opportunity to let that be known at SEC Media Days, and as a true pro, he handled it very well, and he addressed it head on.
I wouldn't compare. I think the two circumstances are very different, two different programs led by different people. What we're doing right now is based on the players and the people in the organization we have, not anything relevant to what we had when I was there.
I say let them know, Kirby. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Told them, how about them fucking dogs? That's what I told them.
Hey, it's all about Georgia. It's not about anybody else. It's not about who they play. It's not about who any of the coaches on the staff have worked for in the past. It's about Georgia and what Georgia can do to be the best version of Georgia it can be. And that is the sort of message that's being delivered to those players every day. And again, if you want to better understand the program and understand why they do the things they do the way they do them, it's insight like this that gives you that sort of idea, right? It helps you as the fan have a window into what it is that's going on inside the building. Now, again, I mentioned earlier, and Kirby spoke on it in the previous soundbite, not everybody is cut out to be at the University of Georgia because the way they do things is just different than the way everyone else does things right now. And again, we have Kirby looking right at the camera telling you that there are certain things that are important in the success at his program. And one of those is retention. So here's Kirby Smart on keeping good people around the program.
Every full-time coach on this year's staff was on last year's staff. Tell me the last time a national championship team can say that. Retention is the key to sustaining success. We can't do that without a supportive administration, and we sure as hell can't do that without a great culture of people wanting to be part of our program and pouring into our kids.
You teach kids, you show them evidence that work works. Like we say, hard work works. Like if you work really hard and you buy into the team concept and you contribute some kind of way, your time's coming. You're going to play. We've had a lot of freshmen go out and start and play, and I think there's a misnomer that when you recruit well, that means you have to sit and wait. We started 2 true freshmen last year on defense, the very first game. So when you recruit talented people and you got people that are selfless, that love the game, you've got an opportunity to have good success.
Now, there it is. I mean, he just told you the secret sauce in Athens. He is trying to make the best environment for his players, for his coaches, and for their families that he can build in Athens. That sort of environment is what that, and being, empowered in the process. That's the sort of thing that is making players and coaches, the best people in the college football business today, want to be a part of what's going on in Athens. So, as any good CEO would do, he recognized the shifting landscapes around college football, developed a plan, made a priority choice, and is working every day to drive that point home. And again, you see the results. He's clearly figured out what works for he and his staff right now. And one of those people, speaking of retention, one of the people that made a huge decision earlier this spring, in the winter of 2023, to come back to the program was senior center Cedric Van Pran. And I said at the time that was a mammoth decision for him to choose to come back and be the guy who's going to lead that offensive line, and breaking in a new quarterback, lead that offense, especially early in the season. And there have been a lot of good stories about Cedric. He's been one of my favorites since he's been there. But Kirby shared a story at SEC Media Days that he hadn't shared with anyone about Cedric, and it's not that old. It's just from the week of the national championship game earlier this year. So I wanted to share that with you here today and just sort of, again, give you a little insight into the kind of person and the kind of player that Cedric Van Pran is, and just how lucky we are to have him as a member of the Georgia Bulldogs.
We were at SoFi having the first practice for TCU. I was frustrated. I was on the mic. We weren't practicing well. We had a little bit of maybe jet lag. I felt like we weren't practicing good. And I said on the mic, "You're practicing like you don't want to be here. Nobody here is practicing like they want to be here." And then after practice, of course, I'd forgotten I said it an hour earlier. I walked by and Cedric tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Coach Smart, you really hurt my feelings when you said that I didn't want to practice and didn't want to be here." And I thought, this dude is serious, and he remembers everything you say, and it matters to him. He cares about this team a lot, and it means a lot to him, and he's one of the best leaders I've ever been around.
Now that tells you a lot. A, because Kirby is obviously a veteran coach and has seen a lot of great players in his day. But B, it tells us more about the person that Cedric is. And again, he is the type of player, very impressive in person. Like, you cannot overstate how impressive he is to speak to on a one-on-one situation. That's the kind of player that is the perfect ambassador for the University of Georgia, and the kind of player that is a perfect example of what it takes to be successful at a place like the University of Georgia. So chalk me up as a big fan of Cedric Van Pran. Now, one of the other things that Kirby addressed, and it brought up, it got some people smiling and laughing a little bit when it happened, and it certainly has in the days since he said it. But Kirby took the opportunity behind the mic to let everybody know that, again, people are going to say what they're going to say. Kirby and the staff, they're not worried about it. But people like me and you as Georgia fans hear this all the time. And it has to do with the strength of schedule that Georgia's going to play here in 2023. Now, we all know the real deal about what happened there. Oklahoma was on the schedule for week 2 on the road, and that game had to be forfeited, or not forfeited, but taken off the schedule and replaced with, late in the process, with the best team that was available. And as it turned out, that was Ball State for Georgia this year, but that should have been Oklahoma. That's old news. We all know that. But Kirby knows the narrative is out there, and someone put it to him as a direct question during media days. And Kirby just had this to say about it.
And come play it. I mean, I'd love to invite any team in the country who wants to play in the SEC. Come right ahead. And I don't get into comparisons year to year, but I'm a big believer in opening with a great game, a great kickoff game. We've done that repeatedly. We've scheduled that out. I think we got UCLA, Ohio State, FSU, Louisville, all in coming years. Clemson next year. We had Oregon, and we had Clemson before that. So a lot of things I can control. I don't control the narrative that people create outside of our building.
Tell them, Kirby. I mean, you can't do it any better than that. And the reason that made me so happy is because that's exactly what I tell people all the time. I'm like, listen, if you think that the SEC schedule is so soft, bring your team down here and play it. Would you trade your schedule this year for Georgia's? I've been saying that for 6 months. I've yet to have one person tell me that they would want their team to come and play that schedule. At the end of the day, strength of schedule is what it is. Everybody has to go line up and play. The season is long. Things happen. At the end of the day, though, if you play and beat every team on your schedule, then you get into the playoffs. Your mettle will be tested. We will find out who you are and what that team is about. If Georgia's good enough, they will handle their business in the semifinal, make it back to the national title game, and hopefully win a third consecutive national championship. If they don't do that, then we're going to find out. Bottom line, it will play out on the field. So I'm not concerned about it, but I certainly did appreciate the fact that Kirby wanted to step up and sort of just say it, just call their bluff, if you will.
We will not be hunted at the University of Georgia. I can promise you that.